Accounting for the cost of recovery, real simple. As we talk about the risk appetite, it's, again, how do we identify the funding sources? What kind of money is available for us to get through it? So again, the first side of it is insurance and FEMA or third-party funding. Next one is maybe your own budget. And then these are the different coverages we talked about. Extra expense, business interruption, PDMC coverage. Those are really outside the box coverages that are in addition to what your limits or your coverage is on a per building type deal. Upfront recovery costs or vendor retainer fees. Many of you already have relationships that maybe you don't know because they're at different departments. And those relationships cost some money in retainers that folks charge. It's important that whoever wears that hat that's trying to keep track of what's the cost of preparing for a loss, the cost of recovery, so that there's reimbursable opportunities. Whether those reimbursements come from an insurance coverage or whether they become eligible through FEMA. It's important for us to know that. The claims department, we can't help you, and the team can't look for alternative ways if we don't always know what some of those out-of-pocket costs are that you have. Those out-of-pocket costs kind of trigger us on, hey, I think there's an endorsement. Forrest and Gino and the team work very hard of trying to be creative. The word no sucks, right? Sometimes it just happens. It is what it is. And again, that's where we ask you, let's understand that we work behind the scenes extremely hard to find creative ways for coverage. The proof is just some of these coverage lines that will go over and over again with you. They're not out there. The PDMC, this extra expense that we put out there, are because we're a member-owned group. We're an advocate for each other. So take advantage of them. Have that conversation with the FMIT claims team to see how we can all do a better job of integrating those programs into our day-to-day claims. Making sense of insurance and FEMA, these are really your primary three funding sources. You're insured by the league, it starts with the league. Roll a claim up. If you're unsure, pick up the phone, right, Forrest? Ask, call. We'll look at everything. Sometimes there's a creative approach. Sometimes it just is what it is. But give the league, give our team the opportunity to look at everything for you. It doesn't hurt. We have the flood program. Just because you have coverage from FMIT on a building, if that building is in a special flood hazard, how many folks in this room know what I'm talking about? Special flood hazard buildings? All right, a lot of us. I'll touch on that a little bit more. Sometimes you may have a supplemental endorsement or you may have a primary endorsement. That's important to know. There's different coverages, different layering. If a property resides in a floodplain, FMIT tries to be as proactive and advantageous as we can of utilizing the programs, but sometimes it falls to then that NFIP policy. Then FMIT comes in behind that NFIP policy to help fill in the gaps. An NFIP policy is ACV. They just pay you a depreciated cost. FMIT, if you've got a blanket coverage, will come in and help pick up that difference. They'll say, okay, your cost of recovery, when you've incurred it and you have your receipts, they'll come in and say, what did you get paid? What did the NFIP do? And then they'll start a claim process of saying, how do we pick up that gap? How do we identify that exposure? NFIP is tricky, it's difficult. We're working now with the legislative arm of the FLC, and we're working with our senators now. We're putting together different actions of what the new NFIP policies mean and what some of the new risk rating model is. We spend a lot of time with our legislative team in DC in representing our cities. So we do have a great deal of knowledge on the NFIP program. Not going to work through it all today, but there are some caveats to that if you yourself or your departments are concerned about your buildings in an NFIP zone, there's an interesting conversation that we need to have. There's some game planning we need to know. Because when a building is damaged in an NFIP area, we may not always be building that building back. If it's more than 50% damaged, if the value of that building, oftentimes you can't build that building back. So we start wasting time and money putting money into a building that the state or FEMA or someone's going to come and say, well, you can't build it back. So let's be smart with our money. We try to be as proactive as we can of looking at those properties. We have all the flood maps. We're trying to engage on that information as well. But it's a two-way street. We got to protect each other from each other. And we got to look at those buildings. So we have your property scheduled. For the most part, we've identified which ones are in that flood hazard, whether you have insurance or whether you don't, and maybe what the game plan is. And maybe the plan is that if it's damaged, we're not going to build it back, so we need to have a plan B. What are we going to do? What's our next course of action? Are we moving the building? Maybe there's some hazard mitigation we got to take care of. So those of you that are concerned with your buildings and a special flood hazard, let's have that conversation rather than trying to get into all the nuances today. But there are some things there that you really, to maximize funding, we need to have a better game plan going in. If not, the day of that loss, we need to huddle up. Waiting until your organization has been affected by an event is too late, right? How many folks have been through a tabletop? Some, right? Some of those we'll do for you. Again, no cost. It's a drill for us. Again, we do a lot of them in South Florida and North Florida just because that's where the events have happened. So we've identified vulnerabilities and we start doing lessons learned with our groups of members to start figuring out what worked, what didn't, what do we need to do better ourselves. Central Florida, you're lucky. Unless you've had some isolated events, we get some practice. But those of you fortunately are not, guess what? You're due statistically. I'm not going to follow you home. I'm not going to put you on a map, but statistically, it means you're due. All right, so let's take that effort. Again, let's define expectations. It's not that hard. It's a simple send an email, talk to John, talk to the claim staff. Let's start that conversation. Know your basic insurance coverage. Pretty simple. You don't have to read the, I don't know how many pages, Chris, 300, right? A lot of pages. And those are very smart people that can go through and read that. I fall asleep after a couple quick ones. What I look for is our deck page and the endorsement page. That's what we're concerned about. Now, we've got those cliff notes to explain. We've highlighted some of those today. So please have that conversation with John or even Forrest. Forrest will give you his home phone number. You can call him 24/7. And he will walk through with you a lot of those, with all those steps. We talked about the PDMC coverage. Extra expense. Extra expense is what allows us to do a lot of those things that we showed up on the board. All of the temporary buildings, the structures, those things to help reimburse you from any additional costs you're incurring because of this loss. It could be overtime from your staff that's having to respond to that loss at that specific scheduled location. Now there's some nuances to it. If you're incurring overtime hours, has to be in response to securing the building, responding to damages. It can't always be, hey, we're just out there doing crowd control. So there are some nuances that we have to work through as part of that coverage. You have $1 million through policy year. $1 million. That's a lot in a regular year. It's not so much when a Category 5 hurricane comes at your door and you talk to Panama City and some of our other members, Callaway, Parker, Quincy, all of a sudden standing up all their buildings and portable buildings and generators and bathrooms. That $1 million starts getting stretched a lot of different ways. But $1 million for a single event when Cocoa Beach loses a city hall or we have the water park, that goes a lot of ways to doing some cool things with your organization, your building, to keep you in business, keep your operations rolling. So extra expense, PDMS, those are unique. Know those programs because that's what we build some of this response around. So your departments know, man, if my building's affected, I need to make sure that my finance and risk department knows that we've got FMIT there to support us, to help us in this way. I think we bought Segways, everything. Well, there was money to immediately replace that inventory, or in some cases, provide some rental units until then they could get their special ordered vehicles in. So there's interesting endorsements there that we really need you from a departmental standpoint to challenge us with, how can I use this? Because we learn every day the uniqueness of different departments on how they could better use that money, so we do a better job on the claim side of making sure we make it available in those cases. Extension of coverage, that's there. In your Simplicity app, we have a cheat sheet that goes through. I think even in the endorsements, if not, again, you can reach out to John. We can get you the latest, greatest cheat sheet that shows you just what we talked about. Valuable paper and records, the most we'll pay under this extension is $500,000 per member per occurrence. Outdoor signs, $25,000. Account receivables, extra expense. It goes on and on. Know those endorsements. That's what you're paying for. That's the difference. It'll really help in your various response and recovery initiatives. After a declared event happens, that's in where FEMA becomes eligible in a declared event. Now, we work with all of you to help roll up those damage inventory reports. So if we're part of your damage assessment team, that's getting rolled up at the state level, not necessarily at the county. And then oftentimes we're reporting to our team, whether it's all the way up to DeSantos or all the way up through FDM, off of, hey, this county's hitting the threshold just within the members that FMIT insures. Here's the data that we've already surveyed. So we can already get one leg up on the competition. The competition is all of you to your left and your right. FEMA's broke. We're now up to about $8 billion in the hole. We keep printing the money, we keep making promises, we keep saying we're gonna build you a bigger building here tomorrow. Guys, it doesn't always happen. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. FEMA's there as a gap. It's there as a last resort. That if insurance fell down, if you fell down, didn't insure right, and there was exposure, the federal government comes in and says, listen, we got to help our public entities. What makes sense? The money's just not there like it used to be. Disasters are happening every day, but yet the promises keep being made by every other FEMA official that decides to leave office and become a private entrepreneur. And we just sit back and watch. And it doesn't matter how many pleas I make to the city manager, to the council, they're still listening to a paid consultant with no indemnification. And we're indemnifying, the league and all of us, all these programs, we indemnify you. If we're doing something for you and I tell you something different, we put that on paper. Hold that same thing to others. People that you pay to give you information need to be held accountable, okay? We can go down a bad road real quick when we think we're getting free money from FEMA to do a repair. At best, we're just trying to, replace our coffers, get us in a place that we're not working 7 years on money and then a clawback 2 years after that. If you're working on your 7th FEMA rep, how many folks got the privilege of working through numerous FEMA reps, right? You're purposely put in that wheel of uncertainty. They do that for a reason. That just perpetuates. How many times you create the same document, at some point you go, does anybody save this? That's part of the process, and consultants are from that. And they do the same thing. FEMA does this, the consultant does the same thing, and you're paying by the hour. There's a component that we have to work with them, guys. We have to, because they're necessary. But we've got to control the consultants. We've got to control the FEMA process to make it work for you, not against you. All right. Again, this just says, it shouldn't be, I can show you all the different reports. FEMA's not your primary source of funding. The messaging got screwed up over the years because insurance was doing, this is my one cuss word, a job in the past of making funds available. FMIT is your member advocacy. You make the insurance up. These programs are there for you, unlike the private sector. That's where then FEMA had to step in and take the lead. They said, listen, we got to go first. Even though all the paperwork says what? You must file insurance, maximize insurance. But at the same breath, the county and FEMA folks come in and say, oh, don't do anything. Put your hands up. We can't touch it until we come out and look at it. You can't do anything until we look at it. Now, that's a little harsh, but right? That's the overlying guidance. While maybe FMIT and us, we're staying on the sideline going, well, let's see, I got 20 million here. Looks like we're here paying and you've told us to go sit in a corner. Told you I'd work baby in the corner joke. Don't put baby in the corner. We have the responsibility, we as the FMIT, as your insurance provider, the one that made a promise to you to be there, oftentimes your leaders, your civic leaders put us in the corner. And we're sitting there going, Forrest, I don't know, I'm here. They're waiting for folks to do this, they're doing, guys, be smart. Insurance owes you the money first. Insurance owes you the opportunity to come in and work through this before we put our hands up and turn it over to the federal government. If we fall down then, hold us accountable. We're big boys. We know that sometimes mistakes happen. Sometimes we put ourselves. But we'll be accountable. Give us the opportunity to get you down the road before you get yourself in a position that we can't help. It happens every storm. Don't let that happen to you. Post-disaster mitigation, there's additional opportunities that when we are working through a FEMA process, get it. We're going to maximize the heck out of that opportunity. I'm not saying let's not take free money. Listen, we are as aggressive as anybody at looking for opportunities. Why? Because we insure your building. We want that building hardened better for the next time. So it reduces our financial obligation of repairing a building. So we will work with you on identifying great opportunities to harden that asset with you the right way. We're not charging you money for it. You've already paid for it in the premiums you pay. If we can't get it done for you, then go spend the money. That's a great picture, isn't it? Those of you that have worked with FEMA understand that. Wait, you said it was obligated, now what? And he took the money away? What the? All right. There's opportunities to maximize funding, whether it be through insurance and FEMA. There's a right way to go about it, and there's a right order to go about it. Pre-planning, I've got some examples. There's examples up on our site on what we can do to maximize from executive orders, which is like the FMIT turnkey elective form, to all the way to protective measures. For those of us, anybody here manage debris or handle the debris side of things? Debris side, one of our biggest challenges is don't touch debris on private property. That'll get deobligated. That's not exactly true. If you've identified a program and a place and time, if you're affected ahead of a storm and it's in an emergency executive order, it can be covered. Many of our cities now have written executive orders that come into, here's a building safety inspection one. But basically what they say is, regardless of what money's available, here's our plan as a city responsible to our tax base. This is what we're going to do, and this is what we would expect. Well, now that provides other opportunities for you. In FEMA, what that provides for you is, let's just do an example of emergency debris clearing. When they say you can't touch debris on private property, that's to protect contractors from overcharging you by just picking up debris everywhere. If your person in charge of that plan says, it is a city ordinance, we are responsible to pick up debris that poses an imminent threat to public health and safety. And in an event, we'll determine what that falls under. And here's the protocol, how we determine it, and how we monitor it to make sure we're not being taken advantage of by a contractor. But we have bus stops that kids have to stand out and paths they have to get to that traverse public property or stand. We have to clear that area to make a safe spot. So there's ways that everything can roll up to take advantage and maximize FEMA. And we can do it without having to hire a ton of consultants to spend 3 months of writing forms up to get in this counter-circular motion. That's already been done. We've got 100 of them already up on board from every member that we've gone through this. Save the time, check out the Cliff Note version first. Save us all a bunch of headaches. 2, we learn from you. We don't create these. We get to take credit for the hard work that we all sat down and you initiated. We put a cool logo on it and make it look a little flashier, and then people think we really know a lot. This information comes from each of you and your departments when we're working with you.